There's a kind of silence that doesn't bring peace. It's not the silence of a calm morning or the silence after laughter fades and gratitude lingers. It's the silence that follows your desperate prayer. The kind that wraps around you like a fog, suffocating, echoing every question you've been too tired to say out loud. You ask God to speak. You beg him to show you something, like anything that proves he's near, but instead, all you hear is your own heartbeat pounding against the weight of your hope. And in that quiet, you start to wonder if you've been forgotten. You go to church and everyone around you lifts their hands in worship like they're touching heaven, but you're just trying to hold it together. You smile so no one sees the ache. You nod so no one questions your faith. You survive, but barely. There are moments you cry in the bathroom so no one hears. Moments you scroll past, verse after verse, trying to find one that doesn't feel empty. Moments you wonder if maybe God only speaks to the strong. And maybe you're too damaged to be chosen. But I need you to hear this. God is not silent because you failed. He's not punishing you. He's not distant because he stopped loving you. Sometimes God's silence is the only space where you can finally hear what the world has drowned out. Your own heart breaking and him sitting beside it. Not fixing everything, not rushing the process, but being with you in it. Maybe no one ever told you this, but the silence you're living in might be holy ground. Because when all the noise fades, when the distractions stop, when the lights go out and it's just you and your aching soul, that's when something sacred begins to stir. A whisper, a memory, a pull toward the light that still burns, even under the ashes. So no, you're not abandoned. You're not invisible, you're not too far gone. You're in the middle of a divine stillness, the kind that shapes prophets, not pretenders. And if no one has looked you in the eyes and said this yet, let me be the first. God still speaks, and he hasn't stopped watching over you. If this speaks to your heart, stay. You're not alone. You're not imagining it. The tiredness that clings to your bones. The way your soul feels like it's been walking barefoot through broken glass. The nights when even your tears feel tired. Like they've cried too many times for the same thing, and now they fall just out of habit. You're not weak because you feel this way. You're not less spiritual because you're exhausted. You're not ungrateful just because your heart is aching for something more. Maybe no one around you sees it. You smile when you have to. You laugh when expected. You get up, go to work, take care of what you need to. But inside, you're carrying a weight that doesn't have a name. A weight made of unanswered prayers, of doors that closed without explanation, of people who left when you needed them the most, of a God who feels too quiet in a season when you just wanted him to be loud. And maybe you've started to blame yourself. Maybe you think you prayed the wrong way, or that your past is catching up with you. Maybe someone told you that if you had enough faith, you'd feel different by now. But the truth, pain doesn't mean you're broken. Silence doesn't mean you're forsaken, and waiting doesn't mean you're forgotten. What you're feeling right now, the ache, the fog, the loneliness, the numbness, it's not proof that God is gone. It's proof that you're still reaching for him, even when you don't realize it. Because if you didn't believe, even just a little, you wouldn't still be here. You wouldn't be listening to this. You wouldn't still be hoping, even quietly, that maybe something, anything, would finally make it make sense. So let me say this plainly. I see you. I understand you. And I know what it feels like to sit in your car after everyone else has gone home and just stare at the steering wheel, hoping for a sign. To lie awake at 2 a.m. and whisper prayers into the darkness, hoping someone hears. To walk into a room full of people and still feel like you're not really there. I know what it's like to fake peace so well that even you start to believe it, until the moment you're alone and the quiet rushes in again. But even if no one else sees the weight you're carrying, God does, and he hasn't turned his face from you. Your pain doesn't scare him. Your doubt doesn't disqualify you. Your silence isn't something he avoids. It's where he meets you. So take a breath. You don't have to prove anything here. You don't have to be better by tomorrow. You just have to know this. You're not alone in the dark, and your darkness doesn't make you any less loved. There comes a moment when the questions become louder than the prayers, when you sit with folded hands, staring at the ceiling and think, what if I've been talking to myself this whole time? You wouldn't dare say it out loud. You were taught not to. To question God was to walk a dangerous line. To doubt was almost betrayal. But deep down in the quiet spaces of your soul, you've wondered, if he really loved me, why didn't he stop it? If he really hears me, so why has he been so silent? If he's really near, why do I feel so alone? You try to hold on to hope. You repeat the verses, you sing the songs, but it starts to feel like going through the motions of a story that doesn't belong to you anymore. You watch others talk about miracles, healing, breakthroughs, and you wonder if you're just the exception. Maybe you were meant to carry this. Maybe faith isn't supposed to fix it. Maybe God is good, just not to you. And that thought, that quiet, hidden, trembling thought, it breaks you because you want to believe, you really do. But there's a war happening inside of you. One side still holding on to the memory of a time when God felt close, and the other side trying to make sense of a God who feels like a stranger now. And it's in that war that the shame creeps in. You start asking yourself things like, what kind of Christian feels like this? What kind of believer is this tired? What's wrong with me that I can't hear him anymore? And the enemy, he loves this space. He whispers lies that sound like truth. He twists the silence into condemnation. He tells you that you're alone because you deserve it, that you've been disqualified, that your heart has wandered too far to come back. But listen, that voice is not God's. God doesn't shame the broken. He doesn't mock the weary. He doesn't abandon the confused. He draws near to the crushed in spirit. He binds the wounds no one else sees. He sits in the ashes and waits with you until you're ready to stand again. This fight inside you, it's not proof that your faith is dead. It's proof that it's still alive, because dead faith doesn't wrestle. Dead faith doesn't cry out. Dead faith doesn't ache when God feels distant. But you're still reaching, even if it's with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes, even if all you can say is, God, I don't understand, even if all you can manage is showing up to listen to this message tonight. That's faith, not the shiny, polished kind, the raw, bloody, aching kind, the kind that heaven honors. So before you tear yourself apart for struggling, take a moment to realize God is not disappointed in you. He's closer than you think, even if all you feel is silence. If you've ever felt this way, share your heart in the comments. You're not the only one. It doesn't take much, not a vision, not an audible voice, not a miraculous event that flips your world in a single second. Sometimes it's just a memory, a flicker, a moment so small that anyone else would miss it, but not you. Because when you're this empty, even a whisper feels like thunder. You're standing in the kitchen numb, going through the motions. And a verse you haven't thought of in years slips into your mind like a leaf drifting on a quiet stream. I will never leave you nor forsake you. You weren't even looking for it. You weren't trying to remember anything holy, but it found you. And for a moment, you pause. You breathe a little slower. You look around. You wonder if maybe, just maybe, that was something more than coincidence. Or maybe it's that song that comes on randomly, the one you used to play when your faith felt strong, and somehow in the lyrics you feel your younger self again, the one who used to believe without needing evidence, and tears rise before you understand why. Or maybe it's someone sending you a message saying, "You were on my heart today," and they have no idea you were about to give up. These aren't loud moments. They don't come with flashing lights or angelic choirs, but they come And in their coming, they prove something. God has not forgotten you, even in your questioning, even in your distance, even in your silence. He speaks in ways that bypass your logic and go straight to your spirit. And the most incredible part? He never rushes it. He's not waiting for you to be fixed. He's not standing with crossed arms, demanding answers. He's sitting beside you in the dark, waiting for the smallest opening to remind you, I'm still here, not gone, not angry, not silent because he's bored with you, but quiet because he's gentle, because your heart is tender right now. And he knows how to whisper without breaking what's fragile. You start to notice these moments more, not because they happen more, but because now you're finally paying attention. You realize that maybe he's been speaking all along, not with answers, but with presence, not with solutions, but with nearness. And that realization, it doesn't fix everything, but it changes something. It breathes, it moves, it opens a window where the air had gone stale. So no, the darkness hasn't vanished, but now it's flickering. And maybe that flicker is the beginning of the light. There's a strange moment, subtle, almost imperceptible, when something begins to shift inside you. You're not suddenly healed. You're not singing with bold faith again. You're not jumping out of bed with clarity and joy. But you stop spiraling. You stop blaming yourself for feeling broken. You stop trying to force God to speak the way he used to. And in that quiet surrender, something begins to heal. Not all at once. Not in a way you can explain, but slowly, softly, safely. God doesn't barge in with noise and fanfare. He rebuilds you like someone handling sacred glass, noticing every crack, honoring every scar, reshaping what was shattered without discarding what was once beautiful. He doesn't erase what you've been through. He doesn't pretend the pain wasn't real. Instead, he kneels beside the wreckage and starts picking up the pieces you thought were lost forever. Your voice, your hope, your trust, your desire to live again, not just exist. He begins where you stopped, in the middle of the silence, in the absence of words, in the ache that had no language. And the most mysterious part? You realize that even in the worst of it, he was already there, working. When you thought your faith was failing, he was shielding it. When you thought you were falling apart, he was preserving the part of you that still dared to believe. When you couldn't pray, he listened to the cries beneath your silence. You see, God doesn't need eloquent words to move. He needs surrender, and whether you knew it or not, you gave that to him. Every breath you took when you wanted to give up, that was surrender. Every tear you cried instead of walking away, that was surrender. Every time you chose to stay soft instead of becoming bitter, that was surrender. And surrender is holy. It is not weakness. It is not quitting. It is laying your weapons down and letting God fight for you in ways you may never fully understand. So if you're waiting for a sign that you're being rebuilt, this is it. Not because I say so, but because you're still here, still listening, still reaching. And even if your fingers are trembling, you're reaching in his direction. If this is resonating with you, don't forget to subscribe and join this journey of healing. You don't have to walk it alone. It takes time. And honestly, you didn't think you'd make it this far, but somewhere along the way, between the deep breaths and the late-night tears, between the scriptures that didn't make sense and the ones that somehow landed just right, you start to see something you couldn't before. God was never silent. He was speaking in a language deeper than words. He was speaking through the timing you hated, the doors that didn't open, the people who left, the prayers that felt unanswered. Not because he was cruel, but because he was building something in you that comfort couldn't have created. You thought you needed clarity, but what you needed was trust. You thought you needed rescue, but what you needed was transformation. And that's what he's been doing all along, transforming the part of you that clung to control, breaking the cycle of always needing to understand before you obey, stripping away every false version of faith that depended on feelings, signs, or immediate responses. He was teaching you what real faith looks like. The kind that stands in the dark and still says, "You are good." The kind that doesn't get louder in pain, but deeper. The kind that isn't fragile, but forged. And now, you can look back at that silence with new eyes. It wasn't empty. It was full of divine restraint, of protection, of preparation. Because if God had answered when you wanted, you might have walked away with a blessing and missed the relationship. But now you know him in a way you never did before. Not as the miracle worker only, not as the problem solver, but as the God who stays, the God who holds, the God who trusts you enough to be silent, because he knows you'll hear him when it matters, and now you do. You hear him in the stillness, you feel him in the waiting, you see him in the small, sacred moments you used to overlook. The sunrise through your bedroom window, the text from someone who simply says, "Thinking of you," the breath you take after a long cry, and it doesn't feel heavy anymore. That's him. That's love. That's healing. So here's what I want you to know. Now that the truth is finally settling into your bones, you were never abandoned. You were being held, shaped, strengthened. And now you don't just believe in God. You know him. Not through someone else's testimony, not through a sermon or a song, but through fire, through silence, through survival. And you're still here. And that is the sound of victory. You made it through. Not just this message, but through nights you didn't think you'd survive. Through mornings that felt pointless. Through prayers you were too tired to finish. And maybe you don't realize it yet. But that's what faith looks like in the real world. Not perfect, not polished, not always poetic, but faithful. You stayed. You kept breathing. You let your broken heart stay open, even when every part of you wanted to shut down. And that is enough. You don't need to prove your worth to God. You don't need to earn his attention. You don't need to fix yourself to be worthy of his voice, because here's the miracle hidden in the silence. He was already speaking, and now you can finally hear him. You hear him in the way your heart softens, in the way you no longer blame yourself for feeling human, in the peace that begins to return without explanation, in the way your breath no longer feels like survival, but like grace. This isn't the end of your healing. This is the beginning of something sacred. A quiet, steady walk with the God who speaks in whispers, the one who's not afraid of your doubts, your pain, or your questions, the one who waited in the silence until your heart was ready to hear the truth. You are loved. You are seen. You are being rebuilt from the inside out. And you are not alone. So tonight, before you close your eyes, let go of the pressure to be strong. Let go of the fear that you've missed something. Let go of the idea that silence means absence, and instead, let his presence wrap around you like the quiet comfort of a safe place. You are safe here. You are understood here. You are welcome here. And if you need words to pray, but none are coming, then let this be your prayer. God, I don't need the thunder. I just need to know you're near. I'm still here. I'm still listening. And I still believe, even if I don't feel it. That prayer is enough. You are enough. If this helped you breathe again, come back tomorrow. We walk together.